Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show that extracts the most important knowledge from your source material.
Today, we are undertaking a really systematic exploration. We're looking at the ancient training of the mind.
Specifically concentration or samadhi and these resulting states of deep absorption called jhana.
Right. And our sources for this, they draw very heavily from the discourses of the Buddha. They give us a kind of practical roadmap.
So what's the mission for this deep dive? What are we trying to understand here?
Our mission is really to get how these highly structured practices actually purify the mind, how they create a calm, luminous, and, essential groundwork.
A groundwork that's necessary for liberating insight, for vipassana.
Exactly. You could almost call it the engineering of consciousness.
I like that, the engineering of consciousness. Okay, let's set the scene a bit, because I think what makes this practice so necessary is what modern life does to all of us. We've all felt that immense pressure, that stress of just constantly being too busy. But the sources point out this strange paradox in our busyness.
They do. It's the paradox of busyness and self-importance.
Self-importance.
Yeah. Think about it. When you finally step away from it all, let's say you go on a retreat, there's this immediate, this profound relief.
A relief from what, exactly?
Of dropping the running around, the errands, the endless to-do lists, and what one of our sources calls the constant psychic gymnastics of modern life.
Psychic gymnastics. That is a perfect phrase. That mental contortion act we do every single day, right?
Yeah.
Managing 10 different identities, 3 different schedules.
Constant information overload.
Yeah. But what's really insidious about it, and you mentioned this, is the self-importance we get from it.
Exactly. Why do we feel this weird compulsion to complain about our complicated calendar?
Because it makes us feel needed.
It validates us. The ability to just sigh and say, oh, I have so much on my plate, or my schedule is just insane. It makes us feel demanded, required.
And therefore important. So this preoccupation, this need to be needed, it just fills up all of our reflective space.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the performance of being busy that we genuinely forget how to slow down.
That's it. That self-importance acts as a huge mental hindrance. It actually prevents us from even contemplating a path that requires us to simply stop rushing and drop our attachments to being the one who solves everything.
And underneath all of this is what the sources call the illusion of completion. This belief that if we just push a little harder, check off one more box, we'll finally be done.
But the activities are, as one source beautifully puts it, endless like ripples on a stream. They only end when you deliberately drop them.
Think about it, right? When is remodeling a house really finished?
Never. Or the garden, when is it perfected?
When is your work email inbox actually at 0?
It's a perpetual process. We're obsessed with trying to make things a certain way to reach some definitive finish line, but we never arrive. It requires accepting that the work is endless and that our attachment to completing it is what fuels the whole cycle.
And that cycle is just amplified by technology. It's not reduced. We were promised efficiency, free time.
The computer, the internet.
And what we got was the technology trap.
The complete inverse happened. Technology dramatically increases expectations, which in turn occupies more of our time.
The classic example is the vacuum cleaner, isn't it?
It is. It didn't reduce cleaning time at all. It just raised the societal expectation for how clean a carpet needed to be, so it demanded more frequent, more detailed work.
And if you apply that to something like, say, graphic design today, it's brutal.
Oh, absolutely.
A flyer that was totally fine drawn with a marker 30 years ago now has to be this sophisticated, polished graphic that takes hours of specialized software work.
The expectations just shift to match the capability of the technology. We are now required to perform at this higher, more professional level for everything.
From sending an email to maintaining a social media presence.
The tech doesn't free us. It just increases the expected level of production and perpetuates this endless system of doing.
So we have this incredible cultural inertia pushing us towards constant production, constant performance. When someone finally does step away from that chaos, say, into a systematic retreat to pursue concentration, it's not immediately relaxing, is it?
No. The sources are very clear. The initial struggle is often intense.
Why is that?
Almost everyone finds their first few retreats to be hard, sometimes extremely hard.
Yeah.
Because when you drop the armor of your identity, your schedule, your roles, you're suddenly exposed.
You have to face what's really going on underneath all that activity.
You have to face the real source of those psychic gymnastics, those inner demons, or you could say those deep-seated conditioned patterns.
It sounds like a kind of psychological and emotional degunking process.
It requires a courageous, intentional effort. One practitioner described the feeling of finally settling in, of the mind's velocity slowing down, as being like the re-entry of the spaceship,
Wow.
where the friction is so intense you feel the tiles blowing off the craft.
That's a powerful image.
But that process, as painful as it might be, is rich and it's necessary. It gives us this critical holiday from our habits and our identity, and that allows for genuine reflection.
And that reflection leads us right to the core question we're tackling today. If the path to freedom requires us to stop doing, what systematic, skillful training is needed to stabilize the mind once the doing finally stops?
And that necessary training is samadhi.
That's where we begin the technical dive.
Oh.
Okay, let's unpack this term, samadhi. We said it's often just translated as concentration, but our sources say that's too narrow. What's the classical definition?
It is so much more profound than just narrow focusing. Samadhi is described in the Pali texts as a deep stability, an internal steadiness, a composed, unified, and collected state of mind.
A collected state of mind. I like that.
So when we talk about concentration in this context, we mean that attention it's undistracted, it's one-pointed, and it's focused with this profound, pervasive stillness.
So it's not the effort of concentrating, it's the result of being collected.
Precisely. Its characteristic quality is non-dispersal, non-dissipation, non-agitation. The mind isn't tense, it's alert, relaxed, flexible, and deeply mindful.
And this unification, this stability, allows our attention to just sink into the object and stay there.
Without wavering, yes.
Okay, so if the mind is naturally chaotic, why is this artificial stability so necessary? What's the core purpose of developing such deep concentration?
The ultimate purpose, as the Buddha articulated it, is that samadhi is the very basis of wisdom.
The basis of wisdom.
The texts say, develop concentration. One who is concentrated understands things as they really are.
What does that mean, as they really are?
Our ordinary, scattered attention only ever sees the superficial surface of experience. You know, the conceptual label, tree, car, anger. The power of a concentrated mind lets your attention penetrate deeply into the object.
So you can see subtle underlying aspects of it.
Aspects like conditionality and impermanence, things that are completely beyond our normal superficial grasp. We start to see experience in profound layers.
But that sounds like a huge leap, right? Going from a chaotic, busy mind straight into profound unification. The sources talk about a gradual training to prepare the ground for these jhana states.
Right. You can't just grit your teeth and force concentration.
So how does it work?
The training is gradual, and it does not start on the cushion trying to focus harder. The foundation has to be laid first.
And what are those foundational prerequisites?
Things like accomplishment in ethics or virtue, guarding the sense doors, moderation in eating, and a dedication to wakefulness.
Let's focus on those first two, ethics and sense doors. If the goal is deep internal absorption, why does my chaotic, maybe not so virtuous life sabotage my meditation?
Because unwholesome states create internal turbulence. It's that simple. If your life is driven by greed or ill will or dishonesty, you are perpetually creating inner conflict and guilt.
And when you sit down to meditate,
those energies don't just vanish. They are the very thoughts and states that agitate the mind and make stillness impossible. Simplifying your life and sticking to virtue goes a long, long way to creating the internal calm you need.
okay, and guarding the sense doors.
Yeah.
What does that mean in a practical sense? It's not like we should walk around blindfolded.
No, it means managing the response to sensory input, which is a much harder task.
An example.
When you see an appealing advertisement, guarding the sense door isn't about avoiding the image. It's about recognizing the desire that arises before your mind grabs onto it and starts elaborating.
Or if you hear a critique, it's catching the aversion before it takes hold.
Exactly. The goal is to stop the mind from being constantly pulled out through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body by craving and aversion.
It's like a kind of preemptive mindfulness, making sure the outside world doesn't dictate your internal state.
Precisely. And then you have moderation in eating and dedication to wakefulness.
Moderation seems straightforward, avoiding excess.
Right. It's about simplifying. And wakefulness means cultivating awareness all day long, not just when you're sitting. If you're mindful when you're walking, standing, working.
The mind is less likely to scatter when you finally sit down.
You're training the muscle of awareness continuously.
That leads us to the practical supportive conditions, what the sources call the gold standard. What are these environmental and psychological aids?
These are practical things that aid stability. First, cleanliness. Maintaining cleanliness of your body and your environment supports undistracted attention.
The agitation of a cluttered desk. That's a really powerful and relatable anchor for that idea.
It is. A cluttered space tends to breed a scattered, agitated mind. If your space is orderly, your mind finds it easier to settle.
What's the second condition?
The balanced mind. This means balancing the 5 spiritual faculties. We look at 2 pairs in particular: faith versus wisdom and energy versus concentration.
Okay, explain that balance.
If you have too much faith without wisdom, you become gullible. Too much wisdom without faith, and you become cynical.
And energy versus concentration.
Too much energy without concentration, you just get restless and fidgety. Too much concentration without enough energy, and you slip into sloth and torpor.
You just fall asleep. So what keeps those pairs in balance?
Mindfulness. Mindfulness is the inherently balancing factor. It's constantly assessing the state of the mind and adjusting the effort, ensuring a smooth, productive energy level.
And the final condition.
A clear object, knowing exactly what you're focusing on and how you're perceiving it. We'll get to that in a moment.
Before we do, I want to talk about this analogy used to describe the purification required. It's the dirt washer simile.
Ah, yes.
Refining gold.
It's an incredibly descriptive way to frame this.
It is. It frames the process not as suppression, but as a deliberate removal of dross to make the mind permanently pliable and useful.
So you start with the coarse impurities.
Which are like the heavy gravel and grit in raw gold. In the mind, these are the ethical transgressions. Misconduct in body, speech, and mind. The obvious barriers to calm, they have to go first. Once you stop the outwardly harmful stuff, the focus moves inward to our psychological states.
Yes. Then you find the moderate impurities, like coarse sand and fine grit. In the mind, these are thoughts of sensuality, greed, ill will, aversion, and harmfulness.
The classic 5 hindrances that we all struggle with on the cushion.
Even though they're internal, they're still violent enough to completely scatter your attention.
And this is where it gets really philosophically challenging. Even after those are gone, there are still finer impurities. They're compared to fine sand and black dust. What are these ultra-subtle states?
These are the fine impurities, and they often manifest as concepts related to the self, to social status, to personal identity.
The texts mention things like attachment to one's caste, one's home district.
And the deepest one, not wanting to be despised.
Wait, I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
Not wanting to be despised, isn't that just a basic human instinct for social survival? How is that an impurity that blocks deep concentration?
It's considered an impurity because it is an attachment to self-conceit. It's an attachment to the constructed story of your own identity.
So if your attention is constantly monitoring how you appear to others or protecting your sense of self-worth,
that preoccupation is preventing profound unification. The mind has to be refined until it's free from that dross, free from the need to construct or defend the I am concept.
that is a staggering level of purity. And the result, like that refined gold, is a mind that is pliant, malleable, and luminous, ready to be worked for the destruction of taints.
Precisely. This is the condition necessary for jhana. And once the mind is purified and ready, the meditator has to choose the correct focus.
Let's talk about that object of meditation, because the sources draw a really clear technical distinction between objects for insight and objects for deep absorption.
This is a crucial distinction. The object you choose determines the type of concentration you'll attain.
Okay, so for Vipassana, for insight practice, what's the object?
For insight, the object is inherently changing. We look at sensory phenomena, or the 5 aggregates: materiality, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. These things are intrinsically dynamic. They arise and pass away, moment to moment.
And when you focus on something that's constantly changing, the concentration is also dynamic. It's momentary.
That leads to what's called khanika samadhi, or momentary concentration. It's strong, it's precise, but it only holds the object moment by moment because the object itself is in non-stop fluctuation, perfect for seeing impermanence.
But for the deep, unifying absorptions of jhana, we need stability.
We do. For samadhi or jhana practice, the object has to be fundamentally stable or conceptual. Things like colors in kasina practices or the breath sign.
And those lead to apanasamadhi.
Complete absorption. The mind becomes so locked onto the object that its relationship to the external sensory world is suspended.
The primary technique discussed is anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. How should you approach the breath to make it stable enough for absorption?
The focus has to be on the entire concept of the breath as a basic occurrence. You attend to it from beginning to middle to end. You're focusing on the stable concept of in-breath and out-breath, not the fluctuating physical sensations they produce.
And if your mind is really wild,
A coarse but effective method is counting the breath. Up to 10, back down again. Just something to anchor the mind to the task.
the sources make an explicit contrast here with other methods, like the Mahasi method, which focuses on the rising and falling of the abdomen.
That's a critical technical note. The Mahasi method anchors attention to the abdomen, but the true object there is the changing sensations: pressure, heat, hardness, movement.
Which are ultimate realities of materiality.
Right, and because those sensations are constantly fluctuating, they are impermanent. Observing them leads to momentary concentration, kaneka samadhi, essential for insight, but it does not lead to jhana because the object isn't stable.
That clarification really helps. So we're trying to hold a single, stable mental object, which leads us to this threshold state, upachara samadhi.
Access concentration. It's the antechamber to the jhanas. A general state of concentration where your attention is steady, strong, the mind is bright.
And crucially, the 5 hindrances are gone.
They're completely absent, at least temporarily. The mind is relaxed, bright, spacious.
It's a highly functional, pure state, but it hasn't quite sealed itself off yet. And this is where the role of intention becomes supremely subtle.
Intention is the delicate steering mechanism. It's the subtle thought that establishes the direction, and it's powerful enough to interrupt or reinforce deeply conditioned patterns.
So at this point, the meditator realizes that even wholesome thinking,
Thoughts about the Dharma, planning your next retreat.
even that is a disturbance to this profound tranquility. Even positive mental activity is friction.
Exactly. To get to full jhana, the practitioner has to resolve to quiet the mind even further, to seek absolute singleness of focus.
And as concentration on the breath deepens, the object itself shifts. It transforms into the nimitta.
The nimitta, the sign of absorption, this is where the physical world gets left behind.
Can you describe what this mental sign is?
It's the counterpart sign, a stable, smooth, white radiance associated with the focus point. It's the mental reflection of the conceptual breath. It is purely a mental object, no physical aspect, and it signals that the mind has crossed the threshold from physical reality to a conditioned mental construct.
And this is the new object of attention.
Yes.
It sounds incredibly subtle and unstable, especially if you get excited or surprised when you see it. How do you nurture it without grasping it?
With extreme delicacy. The sources warn that if you try to grab the nimitta or judge its brightness or try to force it, it just dissolves instantly.
And if you force your attention back to the coarse, physical sensations of the body,
It disappears. It won't wait for you. It has to be nourished delicately with a kind of devotion, appreciation, and trust until consciousness is just magnetically drawn into it.
so the practitioner has to resist the impulse to analyze it or investigate it?
Absolutely. This is the great danger for Vipassana practitioners on this path. If you observe the sign's impermanence or notice the feelings of rapture, you break the momentum of one pointed focus. Those insights have to be postponed. You have to establish stability first.
And that sets the stage perfectly for the 4 rupa jhanas, the deep form absorptions. We are now talking about altered states of consciousness.
Yes. Where the mind is secluded from the sensory realm.
They're not trance-like or sleepy, though.
Not at all. There are states of deeply refined mindfulness and intense focus. The unification is so complete that external sensory impressions are not perceived.
So a meditator in deep jhana wouldn't feel discomfort in their posture or hear sounds.
They are utterly unified with their object, the nimitta.
Okay, let's enter the first jhana. What's the signature quality and how is it achieved?
The entrance is achieved when seclusion from all sensual pleasures and unwholesome states is complete. The signature is rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, accompanied by thought and examination.
And it's defined by 5 specific jhana factors.
Yes, these act as both stabilizers and purifiers.
Let's break them down.
The first 2 work on the attention itself. First is vitakka, or applied thought. This is the initial directing of attention to the nimitta. It overcomes sloth and torpor. Think of it as striking a bell.
And the second.
Vikara, sustained thought. This is the capacity to hold and maintain attention on the object. It overcomes doubt. It's the lingering, resonant sound of the bell after the strike.
Okay, then we have the more emotional or energetic factors.
Right. Third is piti, or rapture and joy. This is an energetic, vibrational excitement, a delightful pleasure that is non-sensual. It overcomes aversion.
How intense is it?
It can feel intensely ecstatic. It pervades the whole body. The texts use a beautiful simile of a bathman kneading soap powder with water until the moisture has completely permeated it, making this unified, cohesive mass. That's how rapture pervades the body.
And number 4?
Sukha, or happiness. This is a gentler, calmer contentment than piti. It's a pervasive happiness that overcomes restlessness.
And final.
Ekaggata, one-pointedness. This is the deepest anchor of attention, the unification of the mind on the object. And it overcomes sensual desire.
So the factors don't just define the state, they actively suppress the hindrances. The first jhana sounds healing, wholesome, intensely joyful. If it's so beneficial, why would anyone ever move beyond it?
Because the path is defined by a sequential relinquishment of the coarser for the subtler.
And what's coarse about the first jhana?
The first two factors, vitakka and vikara, the active striking and sustaining of attention, they are paradoxically forms of movement, and any movement creates agitation.
Wow. So even directing and sustaining attention, which was necessary to get there, is now a coarseness that needs to be shed for deeper stillness. That's incredibly counterintuitive.
It's the next major relinquishment. You discover the concentration is now stable enough that those efforts are no longer needed. They are realized to be gross and agitating, and in the second jhana, they drop away.
The second jhana, then, is born of that internal stabilization. What factors remain?
Piti, sukha, and ekaggata. The rapture and happiness are now described as born of concentration, not just seclusion. There's a deep internal confidence that's still a profound ecstasy.
The third jhana, then, requires letting go of yet another powerful and positive factor. We have to relinquish piti, the intense rapture. Why on earth would you let go of intense joy?
Because piti, while wholesome, is energetic and vibrational. Its very intensity is recognized as a slight irritation, a coarseness compared to the deeper, more profound calm that's available.
So if piti is excitement and sukha is contentment, excitement is just too high energy.
Exactly. The ecstatic delight fades away.
So we trade that high energy excitement for something quieter.
Right.
What defines the third jhana?
The factors present are subtle happiness, sukha, equanimity, mindfulness, and ekaggata. It's characterized by an abiding that is equanimous, mindful, and happy. The happiness here is quiet, sublime, pervasive, a feeling of deep contentment.
The sources suggest that prolonged contact with this third jhana sukha can actually diminish lifelong tendencies toward depression and irritation. It sounds fundamentally restorative.
It is profoundly restorative. But even this sublime state contains a subtle density. It's still a feeling tone, and all feeling tones are conditioned.
Which brings us to the fourth jhana, the final form, absorption. If the third is so peaceful, what is relinquished now?
You let go of sukha, the subtle happiness itself. The mind recognizes that even profound pleasure is a conditioned, volitional state. It's subject to change, and therefore, it's unreliable.
So the clinging to happiness, even wholesome happiness, is the final barrier to ultimate stability.
Yes.
So we achieve stability at the expense of pleasure. What is the quality of the fourth jhana?
It's described as neither painful nor pleasant. It includes the purification of mindfulness by equanimity. The only factors left are equanimity and ekaggata.
So the mind is profoundly still, stable, perfectly balanced.
Equanimity here is the pinnacle of mental balance. It's the complete willingness to behold pleasant and painful events equally, without being pushed and pulled by desire or aversion.
And because it's so stable, this is often the launching pad for insight practice.
It is.
So the first four jhanas are about refining the factors of concentration, sequentially letting go. But the training doesn't stop there. We move into the immaterial attainments, the arupa samadhi. What's the key shift in practice here?
The shift is from abandoning coarser factors to abandoning coarser objects. The jhana factors that stabilize the fourth jhana stay mostly consistent, but the meditator deliberately abandons the perception of form.
And focuses instead on the conceptual vastness of space and consciousness.
Right. We're moving entirely beyond the perception of materiality.
Let's start with the sphere of infinite space, sometimes called the fifth jhana.
To enter this, the meditator surmounts all perception of form and diversity. The object shifts to the non-locatability, the non-confinability of infinite space. It's a boundless conceptual expanse. The mind focuses on the idea space is infinite.
And once that boundless space is stable, the object shifts to the subject, the consciousness that was perceiving it.
That is the sphere of infinite consciousness, the sixth jhana. By realizing that the consciousness perceiving the infinite space is itself unbounded and limitless, the object shifts to this brilliant expanse of unbroken, infinite knowing.
Then we move toward absence, the sphere of no-thingness.
The seventh jhana. By passing beyond infinite consciousness, the object becomes simply the absence of things, voidness, the realization that nothing exists there, and the mind focuses on that non-existence.
That seems like it could shatter a lifetime of preoccupation with the solidity of things.
It can.
And the final one, the eighth jhana, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. That sounds like the most difficult to even articulate.
It is the ultimate apex of conditioned concentration. It's achieved by turning attention away from no-thingness and letting it alight on the subtle awareness that was aware of the voidness.
So it's an awareness so subtle it's almost dimensionless.
Awareness is present, but the perception of what's being aware is almost non-existent. The sources explicitly label this state the best object of clinging.
Because it's so incredibly subtle and peaceful.
Yes.
Okay, so if these states are so difficult and profound, how does a meditator confirm they've developed genuine skill and not just had a temporary spiritual high?
That confirmation comes through mastery, the cultivation of 6 specific mental skills related to the absorption itself. True jhana practice is not the experience, it's the deliberate skill set.
So what are these 6 skills? How do they prove the mind is pliable?
They're all about control and intention. First is attainment, the ability to actually enter the absorption, to drop in cleanly at will.
Second,
Duration, the ability to sustain the absorption for the precise period you intended, say exactly 30 minutes. It confirms the mind is obedient.
third is emergence.
The ability to come out cleanly at the intended time, not falling out sloppily or getting stuck because you're clinging to it.
And the other 3?
Mastery of factors, the ability to discern and adjust the jhana factors internally. Mastery of object knowing the nimitta with absolute clarity. And crucially, mastery of mind. The ability to look back and discern the mind that was just in absorption.
That one sounds like the bridge to insight.
It is.
But if the goal is effortlessness, why enforce such strict resolve, such control?
Because mastery confirms that the mind is fully responding to intention. It proves the mind is pliable, malleable, workable like that refined gold.
And it allows you to practice discernment in between absorptions.
Exactly. You can analyze what made that state possible or what defilement slipped in and then intentionally drop back in to stabilize the lesson.
Without that skill, the sources say it's like a foolish mountain cow getting lost seeking greener pastures. You need to be able to find your way home to stability.
Indeed. And that mastery, that non-clinging skill set, makes the next step possible because deep concentration alone is ultimately not enough for final freedom.
This is the crucial connection. If jhana states are so blissful, pure, and stable, why aren't they enough? Why do they need wisdom?
Because concentration alone is just a temporary piece of desirelessness. It suppresses the hindrances, sure, like pushing them down with a heavy rock, but it doesn't uproot the craving and ignorance that are the source of suffering.
So when the concentration ends, the hindrances can just come back.
They are free to return. Wisdom is what's needed for liberating insight, which uproots the tendency to crave. Concentration creates the perfect vehicle, but wisdom is the driver.
So the stability from jhana is a tool. When is the best, most strategic moment to deploy that tool for insight?
The sources are very clear on this. The moment you emerge from deep absorption is profoundly powerful.
Why then?
When the senses arise again, the mind is concentrated, pure, and extremely non-sticky. It's less prone to grasp at pleasant sensations or react against unpleasant ones, and that dispassion provides an undistorted comprehension of reality.
So with the mind highly focused and purified, what is the core subject of investigation?
You use this stable mind to investigate the 3 characteristics of conditioned phenomena: anicca, impermanence; dukkha, unsatisfactoriness; and anatta, not self. This is the irreversible shift.
Let's start with anicca, impermanence. How does the jhana experience itself become the evidence for this?
The meditator reflects on the jhana state right after emerging. They see that the state, no matter how sublime it was produced by volition. It was created through effort and conditioned factors.
And so it's subject to change, to cessation.
We intentionally create these strong, beautiful states precisely so we can observe their inherent conditionality and their eventual demise. It trains the mind in profound non-attachment.
And once the mind accepts that everything conditioned is impermanent, even bliss, how did that lead to seeing dukkha?
Dukkha is often mistranslated as just suffering. Here it really means unsatisfactoriness or undependability.
So recognizing that all conditioned things, from a passing pleasure to a fourth jhana state, are unreliable because they're temporary.
Means they cannot bring ultimate lasting satisfaction. The purified mind sees the fundamental undependability of life and stops struggling to adjust the world to fit its preferences.
And finally, anatta, the not-self characteristic. This is the one that leads to liberation. How does the concentrated mind pierce the illusion of self?
The sources advise that the insight isn't a blanket negation of existence. It's a precise investigation into what the concept of self even relies on.
So you investigate the 5 aggregates: body, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness.
And you see that every single component is impermanent and not ultimately controllable. Through this, you discover that every experience is, in fact, not self.
What does that realization actually look like in a human context?
It manifests as the mind simply not taking life personally.
Not taking it personally.
When a difficult emotion arises, the feeling is registered, but the identification with it fades. The sources are clear that the fundamental obscuration is the thought, I am.
And any identity built on the mind, which changes so fast, the Buddha said it was hard to even find a simile for its speed.
Is an unreliable foundation. We are constantly in flux. Clinging to an I who owns the experience is what causes the suffering.
And when the mind sees through that I-making and mind-making, that's when the knowledges of liberation become possible.
That is the fruit of samadhi. The refined, pliant, workable mind is capable of realizing profound liberation, including the 3 knowledges the Buddha achieved.
And what are those 3 knowledges?
The first is recollecting manifold past lives. This is a deep time exploration of dependent arising. You see the long chain of causes and effects that constitute identity.
And the second?
The divine I. Seeing beings passing away and reappearing according to their karma, or karma, it clarifies the mechanisms of moral action.
So these 2 reveal deep truths that are normally hidden from us.
And the third and ultimate knowledge is the ending of mental effluence, the destruction of the taints, realizing the effluent-free awareness release and discernment release right here and now, which is nibbana.
But to get there, the practitioner has to perform one last great relinquishment. They have to let go of the jhāna states themselves.
This is the most challenging letting go. You spend years cultivating these incredibly sublime states of perfect peace and bliss, and then, by design, you must witness their demise and abandon them entirely.
Even the best object of clinging, that final formless state.
It has to be relinquished.
Because clinging to any conditioned state, even perfect concentration, is still clinging, and clinging is suffering.
Non-clinging is required for nibbana.
Absolutely.
And throughout this entire journey, you're constantly confronting inner obstacles personified in the teachings as Mara, the deceiver.
Mara represents those inner forces of temptation, sloth, agitation, self-conceit.
All the things that threaten to limit our spiritual potential. Mara might appear as a sudden surge of doubt, or a stream of vengeful thoughts, or a powerful distraction.
Or maybe, most dangerously, the voice that whispers, "You've done enough. You're a great meditator."
Exactly. Self-satisfaction.
So what's the antidote? The secret weapon that Mara's army has no defense for?
Mindfulness. When the mind is purified and mindful, Mara's antics are exposed as just mere conditioned states. You depersonalize the obstacles. Doubt isn't a personal failure. It's just Mara playing a trick. Mindfulness starves those forces of belief and fuel.
So this whole process, it's about ending that constant internal struggle that starts with busyness and ends with subtle spiritual pride.
It's about releasing the tension of attachment and ending the strain of clinging. Samadhi stops watering the weeds of defilement, but only insight, informed by that stability, can uproot them entirely.
The ultimate lesson of the path, we learn, is what the sources call the half step to liberation.
That's a powerful metaphor. A full step implies fixation, placing your foot down and clinging firmly to a perception or a view. The half step is a wise, unattached movement through life, just lifting, moving, and never quite landing.
We cultivate this in the seclusion of retreat, but the goal is to apply that stability, that clarity and non-attachment to the messiness of ordinary life.
That is the ultimate test of mastery. The important skill isn't attaining deep absorption for an hour in a quiet room. It's the ability to abide undistracted and unattached in the chaotic field of life.
To have a quality of presence that remains undisturbed by daily responsibilities.
Where wisdom, derived from that purified concentration, becomes your trustworthy guide, far beyond the dictates of attachment.
To bring this entire deep dive home, I want to leave our listener with one final provocative thought to consider, drawn from the sources.
The Buddha used the simile of the land-finding crow. When an ocean-faring ship releases a crow, the sailors watch its flight. If the crow finds land, it doesn't return to the ship.
But if the mind is released from the pleasant absorption of jhana, the safety and comfort of the ship, and it doesn't discover the deathless property, it returns to deep equanimity.
Hmm.
So we ask you, the listener, considering your daily life and all its concepts, its responsibilities, its momentary successes, what would it mean to deliberately release your mind, like that land-finding crow, from fixation on all of its attachments, just to see what remains?
Thank you for diving deep with us today.